Hi, Ashley.
Alright, so Isabel thinks Heathcliff is evil. What kind of evil things does he do?
He's a gypsy.
He's a gypsy.
He prays to the gypsy gods.
He does not pray to the gypsy
Verbally
gods.
abuses her.
He's a gypsy, so he steals things.
What was that, Jessica?
He abuses her.
He abuses her?
No.
Physically?
He probably deserves it.
Emotionally? What else does he do?
I did say that.
That's evil. He
Jackson.
does a lot of things that are really not so nice. What else does he do that's evil?
Killed Henry.
He just comes close to killing Hindley. And actually, when we get the description, let's see if I can find this. We get the description of how Hindley dies, and it's on page... on page 138, this is at the end of the chapter you read last night. The first full paragraph. Because Nellie is going to come to make the funeral arrangements. And Heathcliff says to her, correctly he remarked, that fool's body should be buried at the crossroads without ceremony of any kind. I happened to leave him 10 minutes yesterday afternoon, and in that interval he fastened the 2 doors of the house against me, and he has spent the night in drinking himself to death deliberately. We broke in this morning, for we heard him snorting like a horse, and there he was, laid over the settle. Flaying and scalping would not have wakened him. I sent for Kenneth, who's the doctor, and he came, but not till the beast had changed into carrion. He was both dead and cold and stark, and so you'll allow it was useless making more stir about him. And then we have, the old servant confirmed his statement, but muttered. So the only account we have of Hindley's death is what Heathcliff tells us, and we have a servant who's like, yeah, I guess that's what happened. So, knowing how much Heathcliff hates his brother Hindley, we could speculate that maybe he didn't just all of a sudden decide to drink a little too much and...
But he was drunk.
But he does seem to be drunk, and Hindley is an alcoholic. He drinks most of the book. Alright, so Heathcliff physically and emotionally abuses his wife. He physically and emotionally abuses his brother, Hindley. What else does he do to Hindley that's sort of really mean, sort of conniving? What kind of, in addition to being an alcoholic, what other problem does Hindley have? Well, yeah, he beats his son. But he's a gambler. And the problem with being a gambler is that if you're a drunk gambler, you're not a good gambler. Let that be a life lesson to you. A drunk gambler is not a good gambler. So Hindley loses a lot. He loses at gambling a lot. And what happens when you lose at gambling a lot?
You lose your money.
You go broke. You lose all your money. So what does he do to get more money?
Mortgages his house to him. I mean to him.
Right. He has to mortgage his whole house, and he happens to have this rich brother who's living with him who says, I'll give you money, you just give me the house. So Hindley mortgages his entire house, all the grounds, all the estates, everything that he owns, to Heathcliff to feed his gambling and alcohol addiction. Alright, why do you think Heathcliff would give him money to keep gambling and drinking?
So he can have the house?
It's evil.
Because he's his brother.
Okay, because that would be the only way that he could inherit the house.
He's a brother from hell.
Yeah, because he's a gypsy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Why does Heathcliff want the house so bad, do you think?
I think
Because he's a gypsy.
I think he wants to take power over Edgar somehow. He feels that if he takes the house, his next step is take Thrush or whatever that place is called, Grange.
Uh-huh.
And then if he takes Thrush across Grange, Edgar would have nothing, and he'd have everything in his way.
Okay, so there's definitely an element of like power struggle. And he wants to have the house, he wants to have the land, and he can sort of encroach on Edgar's territory. And it might also be the fact that if we think back to his childhood, he was the favorite of the father and probably thought that he should have inherited the house to begin with, and this is sort of a way for him to get revenge on his brother, which he basically. Did Hindley do anything to warrant Heathcliff's hatred?
Yes.
Yeah, I would have to say.
Abusing him as a child.
Yeah, the many years of abuse this as a child would be pretty devastating.
Okay. So is it fair that Heathcliff then, as an adult, terrorizes his brother?
Yeah.
No.
So
No.
does it work out in the
No.
end that they each terrorize each other enough that it balances out?
No, you should forgive each other.
Yeah.
Karma.
He's good there.
All right. So Heathcliff fuels his brother's gambling and alcohol addiction, beats him, possibly kills him, locks him out of the house, all sorts of things. He beats and abuses his wife, terrorizes her, causes her to run away. All right. How about his treatment towards Hareton, Hindley's son, who's about 5-6 years old?
Not so.
Not so good, but he's just a sweet little innocent child.
Yeah,
But he's Hindley's.
But he's Hindley's child. So Hareton gets the same sort of treatment that his father would have. He's not given any rights. He is treated like a servant, especially after Hindley dies. Then Hareton is just sort of like put out to pasture. Sort of the way Heathcliff was. After Mr. Earnshaw died and Hindley took over, he's treating his son the same way that he was treated as a child. All right. How does Catherine's death affect Edgar? Do you like Edgar? Does anybody like Edgar?
Yeah.
No.
No.
Yeah.
He's kind of a
Catherine
snake.
does.
He's dreamy.
He's dreamy. Why don't you like? I don't really like Edgar either.
He's a
Why
prick.
don't you like
Because
him?
he took Heathcliff's.
He's a priss.
Well, he took Catherine.
He really.
And he won't
Okay.
fight Heathcliff.
Just to sort of spite him. Yeah. He's sort of prissy.
He's very prissy.
Very,
He was mean to
very.
Heathcliff when he was a kid.
Yeah, he torments Heathcliff when he's a kid.
Edgar's hot
Yeah, but who
apple
didn't
cider.
torment him?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, yeah, we did find that it was applesauce, not apple cider.
It's a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah, he's just sort of like, he's not, I don't in my mind picture him to be like this big brawny man who's could physically abuse somebody, but he's sort of conniving, and he just does mean things sort of emotionally to people. And so when she dies, how does that affect him? Does he change? Does he become...
Not really.
What does he do? After he finds out that Heathcliff has inherited Wuthering Heights, what does Edgar not do anymore?
Torments Heathcliff.
Terrorizes.
He doesn't go over there. Where else doesn't he go? Anywhere. He pretty much locks himself in the house. After he finds out that Heathcliff has inherited the whole property, he never leaves his house anymore.
That's kind of creepy.
Because he doesn't want to ever possibly run into him. So he doesn't go to town. He doesn't go to the Wuthering Heights to visit his nephew, because Hareton is his nephew. It's Catherine's nephew, her brother's son. He doesn't go into town. He doesn't go to church. He doesn't really leave the house anymore because he doesn't want to possibly run into Heathcliff. So he's going to sort of just become a little recluse and be kind of whiny.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, and then that leaves us with Heathcliff. How is Heathcliff affected by Catherine's death?
He's.
No, I don't think he was.
He's a little depressed.
He hits his head on a tree.
Oh,
Yeah, he sleeps outside and continually bashes his head against a tree and sort of bleeds.
Isn't that normal?
Well,
That's what I do here.
let's look at his speech on bottom 123 to 124. This is when he's been sleeping outside under the tree, and Nellie comes out to say, confirm she is dead. She died quietly, and he says, did she mention me? And we find out, no.